Передавати цю справу до суду.
Ви можете продовжити.
Шановні колеги, шановні журналісти.
Dear colleagues, Ukraine Crisis Media Center continues its working day, and the topic our briefing is how François Hollande undermined Putin's opportunity for triumph in Paris. And our speaker is Galia Ackerman, French writer, historian, and journalist. Good afternoon. Indeed, this story is very interesting because for a long time I've been tracing the events, the developments of events around Putin's visits, which had been just expected, and waiting for this visit, we understood what they expected. They expected that Putin would visit Paris with triumph as a czar, and he will change dramatically the policy of sanctions against Russia. This was the main goal of the coming visit. So what the preparations were to this triumph visit? It was the opening of spiritual and cultural Orthodox center. The story of this center is a kind of detective. The decision to build it was made by François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy on the French side, and it was initiated by the Russian Federation when Medvedev was the president and Putin was the prime minister. It was the time of when the relations between France and Russian Federations were developing on very good terms. So why Orthodox Center was to be built with a state governmental status? It was already the return to the policy of Russian Empire, where Orthodox Church was formal religion, although other beliefs were allowed to exist. But the religion of the reigning house of Romanov Tsars, it was the Orthodox religion, and the Orthodox faith was overwhelming among the society. Well, the land parcel was purchased by Russia, although Muslim faith believers wanted to build their monk, so Sarkozy might think that it is better to build an Orthodox church than a Muslim building. This center primarily is a religious center. It is surprising that it was provided at the diplomatic center. Maybe it can have diplomatic status, but French state granted the diplomatic status to the temple. This looks strange. I will not talk today about all the aspects, and they have already been covered in the mass media sources of France. They described why France should have not agreed to build this center. So Putin was to come to open this center along with Patriarch Cyril and President Hollande. Thus, strengthening the friendship between France and Russia, and after that no sanctions could be prolonged. Russian press said that this would be the pearl of Paris architecture. Many other events were to be held those days, so all these events were to ensure the triumphator image of Putin. So the mass media from 64 countries were invited, and they were pro-Kremlin journalists. The Congress of Mass Media was to be opened also by President Putin, and there were also two cultural events which were to contribute more flair to this visit and these events. All these statements in the press, Putin and Hollande were to open a very important cultural exhibition of the collection of Russian tycoon Shukin, which was expropriated by Bolsheviks, containing masterpieces of French arts. Shukin bought those masterpieces when those artists even were not famous in France. They are artists of the beginning of 20th century, such as Matisse and Picasso. So Shukin really had a great collection, which is now displayed in Hermitage in Russia. So the collection was brought to Newton's foundation, and it was to be opened by Putin and Hollande on October 20th. So the visit was to last 2 days. And a small detail: on September 13th, yet another exhibition opened in Paris, which I don't know how to say, which was to strengthen France-Russia friendship. The exhibition was named The Collection. The exhibition was prepared within 10 months. This is very fast. Of course, no haste would be if it is not targeted on some special event. Initially, it was initiated by Moscow curators such as Olga Sviblova. Olga Sviblova persuaded the Pompidou Center to create this collection from zero, from scratch, because museum exhibitions, they are usually prepared within 2 or 3 years, but not 10 months term, so it was very short term. The idea was that the Russian tycoons and several French tycoons such as oligarch Petanin from Russia, they grant to French museum the masterpieces of Russian artists of 1950s to 10,000 period in order to make such a gift to the French people. The exhibition, as it was prepared within very short term, it contains some shortcomings, that some artists are represented more than the others artists, just because it was to be a gesture, like say that should have said that you French people impose sanctions on Russia while Russia makes you a gift, but the collection exhibition did not provide any great impression on French people because of the Syria events. They demonstrated that Hollande doesn't want to have any joint events with Putin. Instead of joint opening, which was to be covered in the mass media sources all over the world, at strengthening of friendship between Russia and France, Putin, it didn't have sense to Putin, so large PR action of Putin just failed, and Russian mass media sources leveled up this fact. They demonstrated that they almost are not insulted, but the disappearance in
нашего коллеги Романа Сущенко. Я его очень хорошо знаю.
The disappointment was huge, in fact. Roman Sushchenko, I would like to talk about him. He was he has been working for a long time as Ukrinform journalist in France. The last interview with him was just prior to his visit to Moscow, and it was dedicated to these facts which I now explain to you here. The interview was which he took from me, it was to be publicized just before his arrest in Moscow. I think that he was...
В новейшей российской истории были другие...
Russia made so that he come to Moscow and he was arrested. Now the lawyer Fagin, who can't open confidential information, so he speaks little. Fagin said that Mr. Sushchenko was invited to Russia intentionally in order to be arrested. He is a very good journalist and he has a small child. This is an awful story. And now please the round of questions and answers.
Andrei Megel, journalist. I have a question in Russian. So you told about Paris so beautifully. What is the reaction of French society? And the Russia didn't react. And does society in Paris understand the situation in our country? I don't think that there is clear understanding or great interest, because we are now in a course of elections, and traditionally external policy does not play such a great role in election campaign. There is rough struggle. We will have primaries among right and left forces, and different things are brought up, and society now is mobilized and they react only on these elections, and everything else is outside their interest. So there are no revolutionary news in Ukraine. Well, when you had Maidan, so people focused their attention, but now there is endless war in the east, and the Minsk agreements do not work properly, and no one understands what their essence is, and people just shift their attention. And also the journalists also pay less attention to Ukraine. Unfortunately, this is at the periphery of their consciousness. So thank you very much, Galina. We don't have time for other questions. Please, if you want to communicate with Galina, you can do it off records. Our next briefing will start in less than 2 minutes. Thank you.